Parents and teachers can do is to teach young thinkers to understand the techniques of good thinking. Guys, this is the chapter. Let's listen to this. To understand the techniques of good thinking and to help them tune up their baloney detectors so they aren't fooled by the stock answers the authorities give to the tough questions. When high schoolers hear the word evolution, particularly in one of those public television science programs, the indicator screens on their baloney detector should display snow job alert, snow job alert. If you know a good science teacher of the Brett Cates sort, tell him or her what you're doing. Maybe the teachers will want to learn more about the snow job themselves so they can teach science in a way of opening minds rather than the process of memorizing the official story. One problem you and they may have is figuring out how to avoid attracting the attention of so-called liberal civil liberties lawyers who actually specialize in confiscating the baloney detector. If you encountered lawyers like that, maybe my colleagues and I can help. My experience is that most such people do not act out of bad motives, but because they've been mistaught. Perhaps we can set up an educational forum to explain how we can open the subject of evolution without opening the door to the Jeremiah Brown-style religious fanaticism that people rightly want to keep out of the schools. It will be a big help in doing that if we have people who want to challenge the official story and they're careful to do so in the right way. I'll put it figuratively. Before you do anything else, be sure you audition for the right role in the next revival of Inherent the Wind. Bert Cates and Henry Drummond are going to win the case again, and Jeremiah Brown is going to lose. Matthew Harrison Brady is going to show up again as dogmatic, who isn't as smart as he thinks he is. What may change is that at the beginning of the 21st century, these characters will not be on the same side of the evolutionary controversy as they were in the 1920s. Even the Supreme Court may realize that Hillsborough isn't the same place it used to be. As always, we'd better count the cost before we start to build the tower. If we're going to encourage baloney detecting, then we must be prepared to live with the consequences all the way down. The scientific materialists thought that they could encourage skepticism about everything else, but keep their own core doctrines safe by identifying them with the infallible science. I hope to show them that they were misguided and that critical thinking, once encouraged, can't be restricted. It is the same with Christians. We shouldn't expect our more assertive young people to stop thinking for themselves when they get to a point where we wish they'd just take the word of authority, meaning us. Probably it's wisest to accept that in the end we just have to let go. I meet a lot of people in Christian work who came through a crisis of doubt, or, like me, converted from an agnosticism. I also met a lot of people who are still in the church, but they were so put off by the rigid religious upbringing that they have very little sales resistance to any liberalizing idea that turns up. Like it or not, our world is a marketplace for good and bad ideas, just as Athens was in Paul's day. The media and the internet ensure that no reservation is sealed off from those ideas. We can do our best to prepare young people for what's coming and to protect them from a little while, but in the end they have to go out into the marketplace by themselves. Yep, that's you, Nathan and Rebecca and Stephen. There's no guarantee that freedom of inquiry will generate the answers we want, but that's why we call it freedom. This bothers a lot of people who don't want to participate in the search for truth unless they're assured in advance that the truth will be the one that they can accept. What if the challenge to materialism fizzles once again, as did the real Scopes trial? Many accommodationalists in the Christian academic world and some fundamentalists have warned me that it's futile and dangerous to challenge the true claims of modernism in secular territory. To continue with the play as our metaphor, their being the Rachel Brown to me being Bert Cates. I tried to assure them that today's scientific materialists are overconfident, like Matthew Harrison Brady was in the play, but there is no way to find out for sure without going into the courtroom. To be sure, the risk is real. Modernists may insist on occupying the whole realm of reason, but they do leave a protected reservation for religious beliefs based on faith. That reservation is our one talent. Like the timid servants in Jesus' parable, we may be afraid of losing everything if we risk it in the marketplace of reason. This is another one of those forks in the road. As long as the secular intellectual world is irrevocably committed to materialism, then Christian doctrines are like supernatural creation and the resurrection are false by definition, logic, and can hardly survive academic scrutiny. Conversely, if those doctrines are true, then materialism as a general worldview isn't true. In that case, the rules of the secular academy are open to question, to put it mildly. To step off the reservation is to question the rules of the larger society. It's to take a risk, but perhaps also to find a great opportunity. We'll never know how great the opportunity was if we're afraid to take the risk. When I drive from my home to my office at the University of California, I often pass Berkeley's public high school. Its facade displays in bold capital letters one of the world's most familiar quotations, without, of course, identifying the source of the context. "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." If you reread the context of that statement, the Gospel of John, chapter 8, you will see why I always smile when I see it inscribed on our public schools. Our schools teach that what makes us free is knowledge, or political democracy, or money, or the space to do our own thing. Yet that's not the real meaning of the quotation, not at all. What is the truth, with the capital T, and what does it set us free from? The rationalist philosophy of Henry Drummond and Inherit the Wind says that the source of truth is science, and its foundation is materialism. This kind of truth sets us free from oppressive religious leaders who want to manipulate us for their own purposes. It also discredits the notion that there's a God who cares about what we do. Materialism sets us free from sin by proving that there is no such thing as sin. There's just antisocial behavior, which we can control with measures like laws and educational programs. Why shouldn't that be enough? Jesus was as harsh in condemning religious hypocrites as Henry Drummond was, but he also warned against the scoffers who built their house on a foundation of sand. The truth that he referred to was himself, and the burden it frees us from is the sin that takes us away from our right relationship with the Father. Jesus said there is a way to be freed from our sins, but we can hardly find it if we aren't looking in the right direction. That's the issue we need to open up for discussion. Our materialist blinders permit us to look only in one direction. Are we sure it's the right one?